Sif's golden hair. Odin, the father of the Norse gods, sat at the dinner table. By his side sat two ravens. Their names were Thought and Memory. They were Odin's flying spies. Each day they left Asgard, the home of the gods, and flew around the world. Each night they flew back to Asgard to tell Odin what was happening in the world. On this day the ravens did not have much to report. Things were quiet on Earth. Odin tossed the ravens some crumbs. He cut off pieces of meat and fed them to two wolves who sat at his feet. Odin himself did not eat. He never ate. He sipped some mead from a goblet. Then he pushed the goblet away and scanned the room with his one good eye. He spotted two of the Valkyries who worked for him as serving maids. He nodded to them. The Valkyries began to clear the table. Odin, the father of the Norse gods, was also known as Woden. Many years ago, the Norse people named one of the days of the week for Odin. They called it Woden's Day. Today, we call it Wednesday. Odin stood up to leave, but just then he heard a clap of thunder, the snorting of goats, and the skidding of a cart. He knew that could only mean one thing. His son Thor was arriving in his goat-drawn cart. Sure enough, Thor, the mighty god of thunder, burst into the room. His wife Sif traveled behind him, her head covered with a veil. Thor was enraged. The veins in his forehead bulged. There was fire in his eyes. "It's an outrage," said Thor. "An outrage! This time Loki has gone too far." "What's the matter?" Odin asked. "Her hair!" shouted Thor. "That scoundrel has cut off her hair." "Whose hair?" Odin asked. Odin's son Thor was the god of thunder. The Norse people named one of the days of the week Thor's Day. Today, we call it Thursday. As he said this, Sif let her veil fall to her shoulders. Odin looked at Sif and blinked. Her hair, her long golden hair which every goddess in Asgard admired, was gone. It had been cut off. There was nothing left but a few tufts of yellow stubble. "Look at me!" shrieked Sif. "I am hideous! I will go live with the dwarves. Without my hair, I am as ugly as the ugliest dwarf." Odin frowned. He turned to Thor and said, "Are you sure it was Loki who did this?" Odin asked the question, but even as he did so, he felt there was no need to ask. It had to be Loki. It was always Loki. Whenever something was stolen, whenever things went awry, whenever any bad deed was done, it was always Loki who was behind it. "Look at me! I am hideous without my hair!" shrieked Sif. Odin blamed himself. It was he who had invited Loki to join the gods in Asgard. Loki was not a god. He was a giant who could change his appearance. Loki had been a constant source of problems ever since. "I will kill him!" shouted Thor. "I will—" "Be calm," said Odin. "I will deal with Loki." Odin called an assembly of the gods. He summoned Loki as well. When Loki arrived, he saw the stern look on Odin's face. He saw that Thor was steaming mad, clutching at his hammer, barely holding back his temper. Loki saw that lies would do him no good this time. He knew he would have to admit what he had done. He bowed his head. "You will restore Sif's hair," said Odin in a booming voice. "I know not how it is to be done, but you will do it. I require it of you." Loki nodded. Loki was not a god. He was a giant whom Odin had invited to live at Asgard with the gods.